Hello and welcome again. So this is part 2 of our project management platform that we started building. So if you've not watched part 1, you can watch it before. I will provide a link in the description or somewhere up here so you can have a look before you continue with this one. So let's actually continue with being able to create a new project. Alright, so we are going to create that folder called new project, and inside we are going to create page.tsx. So yeah, nothing going on here. It's just a title and then there is a separator. So let's actually check that the page is displaying fine. Yeah, so this is how it looks like right now. It's just a title here, and then we are going to render the form here. So let's go back, and I'm gonna create the new project form here. So I have added the new project form and it looks very simple. It's just an input for the name, the description, and you can see I've added a placeholder here for the editor. That is a readme editor, which we are going to build right now. Here, let's use the new project form. So we can check how it looks like. Okay, so as you can see, this is how it looks like. All right, so we have the name, the description, and then we're going to put the readme here, and then we're also going to fix the modal that opens the options to continue. All right, so it's now time for us to build our rich text editor, and we are going to build it as a standalone component so that we can reuse it in multiple places. All right, so let's go back to the editor. Let's close this one. We will come back to it. Now here I am going to create a folder, and I'm going to call it text editor. I'm going to create index.tsx. Now I'm also going to create the folder inside here, which is going to contain all the toolbar components for the text editor. So as I said, we are using Tiptap for our rich text editor. Now let me open the documentation for Tiptap. Alright, so here, if you go to tiptap.dev, you should be able to see the documentation here. If you go to features and then you go to editor. Alright, yeah, you can click on get started, and here you find a lot of useful information about it. So if you go to install, right here I can choose vanilla React or vanilla JavaScript. In our case, we are using Next.js. So we click on that, and here we can go through the installation process, right? So it is as simple as installing these. That we can install the starter kit. Let's actually install them. So let's copy, and then let's go to our editor here, and then I'm going to paste it to install them. So once the installation is done, you can go back to the docs and see what is next. Alright, so here, once we install, we can just do this. Alright, so we can use the use editor. Let's copy this and then copy and paste it here. So we're going to change the name to text editor, and let me export it as a named export. Alright, so with this, let's actually check if it is working. Alright, so we installed the starter kit, right, and then Tiptap React. So we can actually import text editor. Yeah, so from components, text editor, let's save it, and then let's go back and see if it is showing up. It is showing up and it looks beautiful. Right, so we can type in here. That's working. Right, so yeah, we are going to customize this to make it look more beautiful. So let's go back here. Right, so as you can see, we are using the use editor hook, and we get the editor, we pass it to the editor content from Tiptap React. All right, and here is where we have the initial content, right? In our case, we're going to have like empty string or something. So here we have passed some options, right? So for example, the extensions, and then we have content as well. We are also going to have other options, right? So we can say editable. So if we want to make the editor editable, right, we can just say editable true or false. So if we set it to false here, it is not going to be editable, right? So we can go and then check it out. All right, so I just refreshed it, And as you can see, when I double click, it is not editable. Actually, we would pass it as props here. So first of all, let's start adding the interface here. And then I'm going to say is editable, which is going to be Boolean. By default, is editable is going to be false, but because we are now building this out, let's just say true so that we can be testing. Alright, so editable here is going to be is editable. So you notice that here, I mean, it doesn't look like an editor at all, right? There are no toolbars and stuff like that. So what we're going to do is we are going to be installing a lot of extensions. I'll show you very soon. But because we installed the starter kit has some common extensions that we can use out of the box. Even though we don't have the toolbar here, we can do things like bold. So I can do Control B, right? It will bolden it. I can do Control I to make it italics. Some basic formatting stuff, right? As you can see, okay. The starter kit basically contains some common extensions, but we want to be able to apply a bit more advanced formatting, like line, block code, and stuff like that. If we go back to the documentation, you can see that under the extensions section here, if we click on overview, Tiptap entirely is not free, but a lot of the extensions are free for us to use. Almost everything we are going to need to be able to build the editor we want is basically free. So if you go to the free extensions, you can see that we have block quote, bullet list, code block, document, code block, low light, heading, horizontal rule. We even have image. So these are extensions that we are going to install separately. So based on what we want to add to our editor, we are going to install the extension for it. So for example, I can click on a block quote like this, right? And as you can see, when I come down here, we can install this extension by copying this. So we do Tiptap extension block quote. And so it is going to be the same for all the extensions we are going to install. Once you click on an extension, you will be able to see how to install it here. Example is also here. Right, so for example, under extensions, you are going to pass it. Right, so as you can see here, we have block quotes, and it's as simple as this. So that is what we are going to do. So we are going to be installing all the extensions we are going to need and make it work. So let's go back to our editor here. And I'm going to go through and install all the extensions we are going to need. You can see that I have added all these extensions, right? Yeah, most of these extensions are coming from the starter kit, but I have added them here just to show you how we can customize them further if we have to, like how they display in the editor and stuff like that. So I just installed a few of them, like underline and other ones. So if we check package.json here, you'd see that I only installed at mention, text align, underline. And so the other one we have is the starter kit. So most of these ones that I am importing, are from the starter kit. So once I add the starter kit here, I should have most of these here. But I imported them and added them here just to show you how we can customize some of them. I will show you shortly. And here, right, I have added a placeholder for the toolbar. So I've added a div here, and then here the toolbar section, and then the editor is down here. Right. So we can look at how it looks like right now. Yeah. So as you can see, we have the toolbar section here, and then we have the editor here. All right. So for us to see the editor properly, we can add a border here. Yeah. So that we have this border around here. Now we're going to build the toolbar. Right, so I added this placeholder here, but we are going to use this component, which we are now going to create inside the toolbar folder here. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a file, toolbar.tsx, and I'm going to import this. I'm going to make sure that it accepts the editor props, which is supposed to be editor. So editor or null, and I will import this from React Tiptap. Nice. So here I'm going to say if not editor return. Otherwise, we're just going to render this toolbar that we have down here. What we can do is, so just as an example, let's put this div here. So we're just going to wrap everything in a div, which is a flex item center. And we can add a simple button here. And maybe I can use some icon here. Let's just say bold. Let's import it from Lucide React. Let's import this from Shadcn as well. Let's go back here and then see. All right, so this is how it looks like. All right, very, very nice. But this is not going to do anything in itself, right? Because we don't have any on click or something. So the way we make this button work is we can say on click, right, handle bold, and we can create the function up here, say handle bold. And what is this going to do? Right, so here we're going to use editor, and we are going to say chain, and we're going to say dots focus like this, and we are going to say dots toggle bold, and then we'll add dot run. All right, so this is how to trigger the bold action for the editor. So editor.chain.focus.toggle bold, and this is in the documentation. All right, if you're wondering how I got to know this, it is in the docs, so you can find it. If you want me to show you, let me go to the docs again and show you. So here, if you go to editor commands, right, so under the API section here, if you go to editor commands, so as you can see, there is an example here, right? So editor.commands.set bold. Now this is going to set it to bold, but in our case, we want to make sure that whenever we click on it and then we click on it again, it's able to toggle bold on and off. Right, so here we use the chain commands. So editor.chain.focus toggle bold.run. Right, and then we click again, it's going to toggle. Right. Yeah, so the docs are here. Whatever you are looking for, you should be able to find it. So we come here and then let's try and use this and see if this works. So let's save it. Let's go here. Let's make sure that this is refreshed properly. Yeah, so we have hello world here. Now we can try and select this, click on this. As you can see, it works, right? When I click on it again, it toggles the bold off, right? Very, very nice. So I think I am having an extra comma somewhere. Index, yeah, this one. Yeah, to get rid of that. So we're able to get it working, right? On and off. So that is how we're going to add all the toolbar and then make sure that we're able to trigger the action, and then we're able to apply the formatting to the content of the text editor. All right, so I have added a bunch of handlers in here, right? So for bold, italic, underline, and as you can see, I'm just doing the same thing. Toggle underline, toggle code. All right, so I've added all these here, and then I've also added the handle at sign. This one, I'm just doing editor commands.insert content at. Now we are going to make sure we have a button or an icon for each one of these. And I'm going to create an icon button, which I'm going to be reused for these because I want the styling to be consistent. All right, so I have added a toolbar icon button here. It accepts just two props, that is active and then children. Now I'm using this is active here to just highlight that button if the button is clicked. And then I'm applying some styles to it to make it look a bit nicer. Alright, so I'm going to use this toolbar icon button for all our toolbar icons. Alright, so let's go here. And then instead of this, I'm going to say toolbar icon button, and I'm going to pass the bold as the child, but I'm also going to say it's active. If I go back again, you see that there are the rest of the props here, which I can pass to the button so that I can handle the handlers in this file. Alright, so I'm passing is active. Let me just say false for now, because I want to show you how the button looks like. Alright, so let me save this one, and then let me go back to the browser again, and as you can see, this is how the button looks like. When I hover the mouse on it, it appears like this. How do we know that the button is active? This button which has been clicked is active. Alright, so for that we are going to do editor dot is active, and then we pass bold here. Alright, and because we are doing the handle bold here, which is toggling the bold on and off, anytime it toggles, then this is also going to be triggered. So if it is active, then it's going to be true. If it is not active, it is going to be false, right? So we pass it to is active. So let me show you. So we click on it, and you can see that the button is highlighted, right? Like when I click outside, it is still highlighted. When I click on it again, the highlight is gone. Alright, so, and then this is bolding. When I click on it, it goes back, right? Nice. So this is how we're going to use to build all our buttons. Alright, so you can see that I have added all the icons we need right now. Alright, so bold, italic, we have underline, and there is also there is a separator here to separate this section from this. There is also one for code. We have align menu. Now at the top here we also have a header menu. I'm going to show you these components as well, because they are drop down menu. But apart from that, these are all buttons. The tool we are using the toolbar icon button that we created. Alright, so we can go here and then have a look. Right, so we have a nice toolbar right now. Right, so for heading we have a menu, and for align to we have a menu as well. So for example, we can bold, we can make it italics, we can underline as well. We can make it a code block. And then we can do alignment. We can make it a, can we make it a list? List is not working yet. This too. Yeah, this is working. And then we can insert ads. Nice. So most of these things are working. Alright, so let's look at the heading. Right, so you can see I'm passing the editor to this component as well, and I am handling levels h1, h2, h3. So you can handle more levels if you want. I think it's up to h6 for HTML. Alright, so toggle heading, and then we pass the level here. Alright, so for the header. And apart from that, I'm just using the icon from Lucide React, and I am, so for example, for heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, I'm just passing this handlers, and I am also setting that it's active here, changing the styles for the highlight. So yeah, it's basically the same thing, nothing more, nothing less. And it's the same thing for the align menu as well. So here we do set text align, right? And then we pass the alignment, either left, right, center, or justify. Right, and that is what we see here. So for the align, as you can see, align center, justify, and all that. So we can do left, we can do center, we can do align right, align justify. None of them is working yet, but we will make it work. Okay, so yeah, and that's the heading 2, right? And you can see, like when I click on it, this is highlighted, and that's what we are using that is active for. Header is also not working yet, so let's fix them. First of all, I'm going to pass some editor props. Alright, so here I can pass some editor props here, right? So the property is called editor props, and then the attributes that I'm passing is class, right? So I'm just passing some Tailwind classes here to style the editor a bit, and I am using the is editor here to switch between some styles, right? So border top and then border 0 and stuff like that. All right, so you saw that I added this border here. I'm going to remove it now because I have this here. So yeah, you can see I'm also setting some minimum height and stuff like that. So let's see, it should change a little bit. Yeah, so it is looking nice now. All right, bold and everything works. Now you see that this is a bit small, right? That's because I changed the font size text extra small here, right? If I make it text large like this, as you can see, it looks very big, right? I like it being small for some reason. Yeah, so let's go back to VS Code. And then I'm going to say extra small. Yeah, so these are the styles I'm going to add. Now it is coming to you live. The heading is not working. I think it is Tailwind. So Tailwind is overriding like the header styles. So I'm going to add some styles in our global CSS. All right, yeah, so I have to add some styles to our global.css here to override the font sizes, right? Yeah, so that yeah, we get the actual h1 and then h2 font sizes. So once I do this, I add these here, it should work now. So let's go back and see. So let's choose h1 and there you go, right? It works. h2, h3. Nice. So by default here, the heading extension we have here, by default, the level is from level 1 to level 6, right? But because we are using just 3 levels, we can configure it, right? So we can do configure like this, and then pass levels, which is an object, and then pass level 1, 2, 3, right? So we're going to get rid of 4. Right, so we would only have level 1 to level 3 like this. So this is how you can configure some of these extensions. We will do the same thing for this as well. Right, text align. Right, so we are going to say dot configure. All right, and we're going to pass types. Right, so the types is for heading and then paragraphs. Default alignment. I think it's left by default, but we can say left. Right, and here you can also pass some CSS styling, right? So which is going to be applied to the rendered HTML or the rendered content for that particular extension. So yeah, you can apply a whole lot more configurations to it. You can check the docs actually for what you can actually pass here for some of these. For bullet lists like this one, we can do configure. So before that, let's check if our bullet list is working. So let's go back here and let's see. All right, so that is working. So you can see the way it appears, right? So it just appears outside the text editor itself, like the container around the text editor. We don't want that, so we want to add some CSS style to push it inside a bit. So we can go back here, and then for our bullet list, we can say dot configure. All right, and then this one we are going to configure what? The HTML attributes class. Now we want to pass padding left and say 8. All right, we're going to pass it like this. So let's go and check it out. Let's wait for this to refresh. And then let me do this. As you can see, all right, it adds a padding here. Nice. We're going to add the same thing for our ordered list as well. So come here, we can just say item 1, item 2, here item 3. Nice. If we change them to this, yeah, we need to refresh. Item 2, and yeah, that works as well. Yeah, align center works, right? Justify left, yeah, that works as well. And let's see, block quotes, it actually works, but then you can see any effects, right? So let's add some styles for block quotes as well. So when I select, you can see that's highlighted, right here, that's highlighted, so it's been applied. But then we need to apply some styles to make it look like how we want. So let's configure that as well. This one. All right, so we are adding some classes, right, to make it look like this. So we're adding some BG gray, and then for dark, right, we're adding some borders as well. So let's see how it looks like. So let's select and then select, and yeah, there you go. Right, so this is how it looks like. All right, so this is for code block. Now what about for code as well? So this one, so let's remove, yeah, this one we want to also make it we want to also style it a bit. All right, and that looks nice, as you can see. So I think everything is working here. Underline is working, italics working, bold is working, our headings are working, this is working, this is working, this is working, right? And this inserts the ads, right? Now we'll work on this a bit later. For now, let's just say that everything is working. All right, so I'm going to pass a couple of props here as well, right? So I'm going to pass the content and then the onChange, so that I will be able to handle the content outside this component wherever I am using it. So yeah, I'm going to pass them here. All right, so for content, I am going to say content, and then we can pass another prop here. It's called onUpdate. So onUpdate, you're going to call onChange like this. The content we are going to pass is the HTML, right? So we do editor.getHTML. You can see it's a string, it's an HTML string. Here, because it is a client component, I just need to make it optional. Otherwise, I'm going to get the serialization warning. And here, I have to make sure I do this. Okay, nice. So our editor should be working now. I am going to pass one more prop here. I'm going to tell you what we're going to use this prop for. Now, this is a reset key, right? So a reset key is going to be a number. I made it a number, but it could have been Boolean or anything. But what this reset key is going to do is it is going to be responsible for resetting the editor. Let's say I am adding a comment, right? So when I add a comment, the editor I am adding a comment from is supposed to reset, because it's going to save it and then it's going to display it in a read-only editor. So the one I entered the comment in is supposed to be reset. Right, so I'm going to be using this reset key to do that. Let me just make sure I'm getting the reset key here. What I'm doing is I'm checking if there is an editor, and then reset key is greater than 0. Right, so if reset key is greater than 0, then I'm going to reset. I'm going to set the content by doing editor.commands. All right, I don't want to set up the editor outside this text editor. I want the editor to be here. Right, so that is the reason why I am passing the reset key, and then I am calling the set content as empty to reset it. So what I'm going to do is I am going to say default is going to be 0. All right, so I'm going to add this one more use effect here, because I've realized that this is editable that we are passing here. Whenever it is set outside this editor, text editor, it does not work immediately unless you refresh the page before it takes effect. Alright, so here I'm just using the use effect to trigger the sets editable on the editor. Alright, so here I'm going to say if it's editable, then set it to true. And also for the toolbar here, we are only going to show it when the editor is editable. Alright, so here we are going to say it's editable, and then we're going to render this. Alright, if not, we are not going to show the toolbar. Alright, so by default we are saying true, that's why it is showing, but if we go here, it is going to be false by default like this. We need to pass content here. Let's pass empty string here. We're going to say editable true here. The content is going to be empty, and then we should be able to see it. All right, nice. So we have our text editor in place. So what we're going to do is we go back to the code, and in here we are going to add a state for the readme. So we have the name and description. We are also going to add one for readme. And when we come here, we're going to say readme. On change, we're going to set the readme. All right, so now our editor is working. We are going to go a step further. We are going to make this button work. When you click on it, then it's going to open the modal where you can set up the default fields, right? The default options. So let's go back, and I'm going to close all these open files. So I'm going to add the modal component here. All right, so I have created the create project modal here. It's an empty modal. There's nothing much going on here. Yeah, so I'm using a dialog trigger. This is the content. So this is where I'm going to be putting all the content of the modal. As you can see, I have the button here, the checkbox here, which says skip default options. And then, yeah, this button which says create project is also here. All right, so yeah, the basic modal template that I have added here, and I am going to use that on the form section here. So instead of this, I am going to say create project modal, and I'm going to save it. Now there are some props that I need to pass to this modal, which I would be using in here. So as you can see, the name, description, and then the readme, because I'm going to be creating the project inside this component. I need the project details here, and then I'll add it to the database. Right, so since we have it here, name, description, and readme, I'll just pass it to this, and then I'm going to save this one, and then we should check it out. All right, so you can see the button is different now. All right, and it is disabled because I have to enter a project name, which is required. So let's say test project, and now when I click on it, then it opens the modal. So as you can see, there is nothing on the modal yet, right? So we have the project name, and then we have the customized default options, heading, label. So we are going to add the options, the default options that we can set or skip here. These options are the same options I'm going to be using on the settings page. So we're going to create these as separate components and make it generic. If I show to you again how it looks like what we are going to work on. So these options, so for status, priority, and size, label is a bit different, right? So we're going to work on these ones first. So when I click on create new, it shows this modal. When I edit, it shows the same modal as well, and we also have a drag and drop feature, right? So this is what we are going to work on. So we're going to fill out this component. So I call it custom field options, and I have a title here with a button, and then description is optional. So if you provide a description, it's going to show here. And here we have a container where we are going to render the list. To be able to test, I'm going to use it on this inside this component just to be able to test. That's because this is a component we are working on now. So I'm going to put it down here. Right, so I'm going to say custom failed options. I'll just import it here so that we can test it. And then I need to provide some props. So if I go to that component again, right, so here we want to tell it the field. We are using the component for the title, description, and then we are going to pass the list of options. Right. So for now, we are going to pass some dummy data here. So I'm gonna say field, maybe status, and then we're gonna say options empty. The others are not actually required, it's optional. All right, so let's pass only the required options for now. So let me go to the page and then check. Yep, so as you can see, it is here. I have create button and then options. Nice. So we are going to test it here. All right, so when I go back here, now you can also see I have also added a type for how an option looks like. All right, so we have the ID, label, color, and then the description. All right, so let me close some of these. Let me actually collapse these so that we have more room. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in a folder so that I can add all the other components. All right, so I'm going to say custom field, and I'm going to put this inside here, and I'm going to create another component called option item .tsx. Okay, so I've added a template for an option item too as well, which we are going to use here. Right, so let me use one of these here. So I'm gonna say option item, going to import, going to save. Let me see how it looks like. All right, so yeah, this is how it looks like right now. So let's go into the component and I'm gonna show you. So as you can see, it's just a template. So I have a grip vertical here for the icon where we are going to hold and drag. Right, I have this custom field tag renderer, which is a component that I created. I'm coming to talk about that. And there is a description here. Right, so you can see this one, the label is backlog. Right, so I'm just putting a random label here. And when you come down here, we have the drop down menu, which shows the ellipsis, and then edit and then delete options. Right, so here where we render a field tag, right, as you can see, we have a generic component here, which uses a badge component from Shadcn, and here I'm passing a style to it. The style is being generated from a help function that I created. So I have added some helper functions which I'll be going through as we move along, but this is the one I want to show you right now. So here, to be able to get the color effect that I want, I'd say, for example, this type of badge that I want, I'm using HSL colors. Right? So the hue, saturation, lightness, and here I have HSL modify lightness, which is this function up here. And as you can see, I am modifying the lightness. All right, so I am doing a regex pattern match here. I'm also checking that the color path is an HSL color. The only way we can change the lightness of different colors is by using HSL colors. I mean, for labels, we use hex colors, right? But for these custom options like statuses and sizes priorities, we use HSL colors. So we're going to make sure we are always passing HSL colors. Here, I'm doing a regex pattern match here. So first of all, check that this is a valid HSL color. So if it doesn't match, I'm going to throw an error which says invalid HSL color string passed. As you can see, this is how an HSL color looks like, right? So you can see HSL, and then we have the bracket, and then we have 3 different numbers here for hue, saturation, and then the lightness, right? So the lightness percentage, the saturation percentage, and then the hue number. So down here, you can see we are doing match 1, right? We are getting the hue, and then match 2, we are getting the saturation here. Now, if you do a console log of match, let me show you how the match is going to look like. Right, so here, this is how it's going to look like. It's going to return an array, right? The first part is going to be the input, right? So the actual HSL color you passed. The second part is going to be the hue. The third part is going to be the saturation, and then this is going to be the lightness. Right? There are some other items here as well, but we don't really care about those. We only care about these ones. If you want to get the hue, you would get this, right? So an index of 1, because it starts from 0, right? So 1, and then if you want to get a saturation, you get an index of 2. So that is what we are doing here. So this is the hue, this is the saturation, and here we are building a new HSL color string, and then we are modifying the lightness, right? So we just want to make sure that we modify the lightness to basically fit light and dark theme. I mean, that's the whole point. So when we are in light mode, we want to make sure we are modifying the lightness to look good, and then when we are in dark theme, we want to make sure we make it look good as well. All right, so if I go back again and I change the light theme, now you can see that it's still looking okay, right? Yeah, and then when you go dark, you have the dark version of it. So that's the whole point of this. We only modify the lightness, that is the lightness percentage based on the theme. So here you can see get custom filter colors for theme. We are doing HSL modified lightness, right? So we pass the percentage, and then we pass the percentage that we want as well. So if it is light, we pass this percentage. If it is dark, we pass this percentage. All right. So we do for the background, we do for the color of the text, and then we do for the border as well. There are 3 things involved here. All right. So the background of the tag, the border of the tag, and then the text. So that is what you see here. All right. So here, that's what we are passing here as style. Okay, so we are going to be using this custom field tag renderer throughout wherever we want to render a tag. So here we call the custom field tag renderer. We pass the color. This is the HSL color, and then it's going to do the coloring behind the scenes for us, and then we pass the label, which is going to be the text. So I'm going to use this a couple of times so that we'll be able to implement the drag and drop. All right, so let's check it out and see. All right, so this is how it looks like. I'm going to pass some props so that we can change the labels and then the colors. So here we're going to say, and we're going to pass the whole item here, all right, which is a custom field item, which will contain the label, color, and then the description. So here we are going to basically say item and then props. So here we can do item dot color, and then for the label we can do item dot label. Item dot label, and these are optional. So let's just add an empty string here. So when we come to where we are using it, here we can pass different items to it, right? So we can say item. Even better, I have added the default options for some of these here. So let me open here. And so I've added some data for these default options that we are going to be passing. So we can use one of these. So let's just try and then, okay, so let's use default statuses here. So here you can see that we have default sizes: small, medium, large, extra large. For statuses, we have backlog, ready, in progress, in review. Right, we have for priorities, and then labels as well. So what we can do is we can actually not duplicate these. We can just do a map in here, and we can use one of them. So we can say default statuses is going to be item dot ID, and then item is going to be item. So once we save it, we should have different items. So it says cannot read properties of undefined reading color. Okay, so it just refreshed, and yeah, everything looks good. I think there are some missing styles here. Right, so let's check the previous one. Yeah, so this looks rounded, and this one is more in the center. Let's fix the style issue. Let's just add a class here. So class name, and then just say rounded full, and then let's see. Yeah, that fixes it. Good this way. All right, so we are going to implement the drag and drop for this. All right, so we should be able to grab here and be able to drag these items, sort them in different orders. So that's what we are going to do. Now we are going to use DnD kit, as I mentioned earlier. So if you don't have DnD kit installed, make sure you install it. Now I can open the documentation here, so you can copy this link and npm install DnD kit core, and you can install it. So once you install it, you can come here, go to get started. There are a lot of information here to familiarize yourself with how it works. I'm also going to show you the implementation. There is installation. There is a quick start here. So here you see you have to provide a DnD context, draggable and then droppable should be within the DnD context. So if you go to the API documentation, it talks about how it works. There is also the collision detection algorithm that you can read about. You can use the DnD context hook. There is also a monitor. Yeah, you can also look at some examples, right? If I go back home, if I go back home here, you can see there are some examples here. So I can click on it. It's a storybook, so it is going to give you a lot of examples here that you can basically try. I'd say there's some components as well, horizontal axis. If you come to droppable, sortable, so you can see some examples in here as well. You can have a look at the docs, but we are going to use this now in our project. To start, to make the drag and drop work, you have to first of all provide a DnD context to the container that you want to make a drag and drop. Let's close this one. So custom field options. So this container, so inside here you can just say DnD context like this. So let's import DnD context. It looks like I haven't installed DnD kit myself, so I'm gonna do that right now. I'm gonna paste the command here. So it's installed, as you can see down here. I'm going to collapse this. So now I should be able to import DnD context. Okay, so I have imported it. We'll go here. Yeah, it's here. We want to be able to sort the different items. So what we're going to be using is we're going to use a sortable context. So there is a sortable context here that you can provide within the DnD context. The sortable context provides information via context that is consumed by the use sortable hook. So we are going to provide the sortable context, and we are going to use the use sortable hook. You'd notice that we also have to install the DnD kit sortable, right? Yeah, so it's not part of the DnD kit core. So these are the two DnD packages we are going to install. We're not going to install any other package again. So let's go ahead and install this one too. All right, so that is done installing. Let's clear this. And inside here, we are going to say sortable context. All right, and we're going to move this down as well. So let's import this too. Here we need to pass some props, right? So the first required prop that we need to pass is items. And items are supposed to be a list of unique identifiers and IDs of the items that you are parsing here. So for example, default statuses. The ID field is what is needed here. We can pass the whole default statuses. It's gonna work still since they have unique IDs, but we can also do something like dot map, and then we can say item and then just map the IDs to the items dot ID. We can do this as well. We also need to pass a sorting strategy. So strategy, the dev strategy we are going to pass is vertical list sorting strategy, since our sorting is a vertical sorting. These are the two props we are going to pass to sortable context here. I'm going to save it. So right now, this is a droppable container. We can actually drop items on them, right? But you can see we can drag these because we have to make these items draggable before we can be able to drag these. So let's go back. All right, so we're going to go into this component, and the first thing we're going to do is to use the use sortable hook. So let's import from DnD sortable, and we're gonna get a bunch of items from here, but we need to pass some options here as well. All right, so the first one is ID, and we are going to say item.id. All right, so this item, and then we also need to pass data. This we are going to use to specify the type of item we are dragging. So there are going to be so many draggable items in our project, so we need to be able to tell what type of draggable item is this, and then be able to use it to do whatever we want to do. So we're going to pass a type here, and this is an option, so we're just going to say the type is option, and then we are going to pass option, which is going to be the actual item. So this actual item, so it means that on a draggable item, we still have all the properties on that item when we are dragging, so we would be able to use it during a drag event, right? So this is how you pass the payload. So this can be any name at all, but just because it's an option, I just say option and then I pass item here. So what does use sortable gives us? So we are going to get attributes. We are going to get listeners. We are going to get a set node ref. We are also going to get something we call transform, and then transition as well. We are also going to get is dragging boolean. Alright, so these are the properties we are going to destructure from the use sortable for now. Here we're going to create a style object using the transform and transition property that we get here. Alright, and this we are using css.translate, and we need to import from DnD kit utilities. So let me do the import up here. Alright, so on this div we are going to say ref. So this is where we're going to pass the set node ref, and then we're also going to pass the style. Alright, so this style, and then here this is the handler. So this is where we want to pass the attributes and listeners. Alright, so this is where we're going to pass the attributes and listeners. So this is basically where we want to grab and be able to drag. With this, we should be able to drag the items now. Alright, so let's go and then check. And so you'd notice that I cannot grab anywhere apart from here. Now, as soon as I grab here and I begin to drag, it is now able to drag. I can drag it anywhere, but then if I place it anywhere, it's just gonna go back. Alright, so we are going to handle the movement as well, like the placing of the item. When I drag the item, this item looks exactly the same as it is. Alright, so we just want to add some small styling to make the item look like make the active item be a bit different than the rest of the items here. So with that, we are going to use the is dragging. So this is dragging here. So we can come down here and then say if is dragging, then return this. So we are returning exactly the same as this div, but then without the content. So we are passing the set node ref and then the style as well, so that it will maintain the style we have for this div. So this is also the same as this. So we come here and as you can see, so we don't have the content because we are using just the div and not the content inside it. So another thing to add before we fix the placement is drag overlay. So with that, what we do is we will go back to custom field options here, right? And then inside inside DnD context, so outside the sortable context here, we are going to put a drag overlay here, and we're going to use React Portal. Right? So we're going to do create portal, and I have to make sure I bring the curly brace. So we're going to import this from React DOM. And then here we are going to say drag overlay from DnD kit core, and I am going to say option item here again. Alright, but how are we going to get the item for this option item so that we would be able to show it on the drag overlay? Here we are going to create a function, and that function is going to be passed to DnD context. So here we have on drag start function. That is when the drag starts. We just want to set the active item, and you should remember we passed the option here for the option item, right? So we should be able to get that item and pass it to the drag overlay. So let's go back. So we have on drag start, and we are going to say on drag start, and then we're going to create that function here, constant on drag start, and here we get event, and the type is drag start event, like this. Here we want to check that the item we are dragging is an option. Right, so here we said the type of this item is option. So we want to say if event dot active dot data dot current. Right, so this is going to give us the current item we are dragging. So we now want to do dot type, and then we check if it is option. So this is going to be optional. So let me put this here. Here we are going to create a state here. So use state, and here we're going to say active option set active option. Right, the type here, let me first of all import this. So the type here is custom field data, and if there is no active item, it's going to be null. So this should be this. So initially I'm going to say null here, and then once we are dragging and it's an option, then we are going to set active option to events.current events.active.data dot. So the current, this one we were doing type, this type, so we get the item from option, so we do dot option. Nice. Which means that we are going to get the active option here, which is going to be the item that we are dragging. So here we can check that active item is not null. All right, before we show this option item, and then we are going to pass it here. So expected to arguments, yeah. So we have to make sure we render it within the document body. So document dot body, like this, and this should be fine. So let's save this, and then let's go and check it out. Hopefully this has refreshed. So now it looks nice, right? So it does not also drag beneath the item, it drags over the item because we are now using the overlay. Right, so you can see from here it is able to know the active item, pass the active item to the drag overlay, and then it's able to show it exactly as the item we picked. Right. But you can see that still we are not able to place it. Right, you're not able to place it in a different position, so let's fix that as well. So for that we're going to use on drag end. So here we're going to say constant on drag end. We have to make sure that we pass it to DnD context as well. So on drag end. Inside here we're also going to get an event, drag end event. Alright, so here the first thing we are going to do is as soon as the drag ends, we want to make sure we are resetting the active item to null. Alright, so we're going to do set active item to null, and we are also going to get the active and over from event. So let me do a console log of this event so that you see how it looks like. Alright, so I can do it here. So console.log, and then I'm going to drag an item. Alright, so I drag this over. So I dragged the backlog item over the ready item, and then I drop it. So let's go here. Alright, so we open this event, and then here you can see active. This is the ID, and then when we check the option, you'd see that the label is backlog, right? So the active item is the one we are dragging. Now let's check the over current dot option, right? And you'd see that the over item we dragged the active item over is the ready item, right? So in this event we have the active item, and then we have the over item as well. So what we are going to do is we are going to first of all check if there is an over item, right? So if we are actually dragging over an item, if not, we are just going to return, because we are not doing any drag, right? So if not over, we are just going to return. Otherwise, what we're going to do is we are going to loop through the list, and then we are going to swap their and then we're going to swap their positions, right? So we're doing if active ID is not equal to the over ID, which means we are not dragging over the same item that we picked for some reason. Now you notice that we are using default statuses here, which means we are using it outside this component. So there is no way to update this item, at least here. So what we're going to do is we are going to set constant options. We're going to use state as well. So let me just say use state, and here we're going to say options, and then we're going to say set options. So we're going to create a local state here, and we're going to say default statuses as an example. which means that we are going to use the options down here instead of default statuses. So we can now update the list by swapping the pages using the set options local state we have here. So here we are going to say set options. Right, and then we have previous options. So there's an extra I here. Alright, so inside here, you're going to get the active index, and then we're also going to get the over index, right? So the index of the item we are dragging, and then the index of the item we are dragging over. So here we do active index. We get it from previous options dot find index option, where option ID is equal to active ID. And then we also get the over index by doing the same thing. And then here, to be able to swap the indexes or place them in a different position, we are going to use a utility function from DnD get sortable called arrayMove. Alright, so here, arrayMove, we pass the previous options, active index, and then the over index to arrayMove, and this is going to swap the positions of the two items. This is going to return a new array, so we can say return. So we are going to return this. So let's import this as well. All right, we don't need this one. So once I save it, let's go and check if it is working. So we come here, and then we are going to drag this item, move it down here. So as you can see, now it does not go back. It changes the position, so I can drag and then put it down here, and it works. All right, I can put this here. That works as well. So I can sort them in any way that I want. Nice. So one property that I have to add to this is the order property, because we're going to be using it to display the order of the items, right? So here you can see that here I don't have the order. So here I am going to pass order, which is going to be a number like this, and inside here I can just calculate the order from here, right? So instead of returning this one, I can basically say I can say constant reordered options or reordered items here. Right, so I can just do this reordered items dot map, and then I'm going to add the order. So the order is basically going to be the index, the new indexes. So this is how our drag and drop is going to look like. So as you can see, nice. All right, so now we have to make this generic. So instead of passing this, we're going to pass options. And so as you can see, we are parsing the options from here. So let's get it from here. And then what I want to actually do is I want to also pass the states from outside. All right, so I'm going to remove this one from here. This is going to be this, and then here I'm going to say set options. All right, so that we can use this component for different options and be able to update them outside this component. And then we would also be able to get the updated options wherever we use it. All right, so it's possibly undefined. So let me just do this here. And then one thing I also want to make generic is this side. All right, so I want to be able to pass a React Node element button here, instead of having the static button here, so that we can be changing the style. All right, so the reason why I want to make this generic is that we want to be able to change the style of the button based on where we are using it. You would notice that if I show you the finished application, yeah, you'd notice that here we have the button like this, right? But where we use it and the new project, So here, this is how the buttons looks like. So we want to be able to change the buttons. So let's go back. I'm going to call it embedded create option element, which is React node. Should I say button? I mean, this one is fine. So let me pass it here, and then I'm going to render it here. I'm going to remove these unused imports. So if this is a status, we can pass default statuses from here. Save this one. Yep, and then also we need to set up the state to make it work. All right. So here we need to just say const use state. Actually, just wanna. All right, so I'm going to say statuses set statuses, and then it's going to be this, which means I am going to pass these two, and I need to pass set options as set statuses. All right, so once I do this, then it should be working again as normal. All right, so you can drag and then drop, and now I can also use this again, and then let's say this is size. All right, so you can say sizes set sizes, and I can come here and I can copy and paste this sizes, and I can say default sizes. Right, and then when I save it, we should be able to see this as well. So yeah, I think there is also one more pop that we need to pass. That is already here. So the title is what we need to pass. So you can see we are using title or options here. So when we come here, where we are using it, we can say title. So this is statuses, and then we can do title here as well and say sizes. And then once we save it, we should have the correct titles. Yeah, so statuses and then sizes. All right, so no button is showing here, no create button is showing here because we've not added the element, the embedded button. All right, so here we can say embedded create option button, and then we can create a button here. All right, so button. All right, and I can say create maybe new status or something. All right, let me import this. I'm missing an R here, and I can have a different one for this, which says create new size. Nice. So when we come here, we should be able to see their buttons. Yeah, nice. Okay, so just to save some time, I have gone ahead and added the modal component that we are going to use when you click on the create option modal. So this is the component here. So as you can see, create or edit custom field option modal. And if I show you the file here, it uses a dialog. And here I am cloning an element. And the reason why I'm cloning an element here is that I want to be able to, just like I said, I want to be able to pass the embedded button here. And then I clone the element and then I add an onClick event. And then the onClick event is going to open the modal, right? So I'm using this use modal dialog hook that I created here. It's a very simple hook. You use state. And then it checks if it's modal. It checks if the modal is open. There is also a function to open the modal and then close the modal. So open modal will just set the state to true. Close modal will just set the state to false. That's what I will be using for all my modals. So here we call the close modal when the open, when the on open change on the dialog is triggered, which is when the modal is closed. Right, so we will call this one, and then when the button is clicked, we will call open modal. Right, so the reason why is that we want to handle the opening and closing of the modal in the modal component itself. But then we know that the button is coming from outside the component. So we are going to clone the button and then we would add the onClick handler. So the reason why the button is coming from outside the component, as I mentioned to you, we want to have a generic button for different parts of the project where we are using the, where we are using the options. All right. Yeah. And this is the way I think it's easier to set it up. Alright, so this is a trigger. This is a dialog trigger to open and close. Right. There is a fallback button here in case you don't pass any button. There is always a fallback button here, which uses the SASSBTN styles. So you don't have to pass a button. Just use the default button. But here you can see that I have the modal title, I have the separator, and I have this custom option form, which I am going to show you. So inside the form, it will show the badge as the preview. And here there is an input for the label text. So this is where you enter the label text. And there is also color select component. I'll show you shortly. But there is also the text area to enter the description as well. And then the button to submit. So inside the color select, I am using some colors. So here I have a constant which adds some default colors that I can select. And as you can see, because we need the colors in HSL, I provided the colors in HSL. So you're going to pick the provided colors for you, and it's going to store it as HSL colors. For label colors, we are using hex. Right, so we have label colors here as well. So for the color select, we go through the custom field colors. That is the colors I showed you now, and then we render a button for it. So if you remember from the finished app, this is how it looks like. Alright, so we have the label text form, we have the color select, we have the description, and then you can click on save. Right. So that is what we are going to have on our modal. So if you go back, I have created the color select component, the custom option form, and then this is the modal that we are going to use. So these are the options I am passing. Alright, so you can see I pass handle submit here, so that when we use it for different components, we can submit it outside this component as well. So here, handle submit data, we call the handle submit as well, and then we close the modal too. Right, so if I am going through this fast, you can have a look at the source code, right? And then take your time and go through. All right, so it means that here, instead of using adding a button here, we use the create or edit custom field option modal here. We pass the title, so this is status. So create new status option. right? And we don't even need to pass the trigger element because it is going to use the default one. Right, so let me show you. Let me just pass the trigger label. Right, and this is going to be create new status. And then let's see. Yeah, so create new status. And then when we come here, we can use the same thing down here. Now they mean to replace everything. So inside here, and then this is going to be size of create new size. And yeah, we have create new size. Now when I click on it, you'd see that it opens the modal. So this is the form. Nice. Right. So here the title is different, create new status option, and here create new size option. Alright, so those are the title we pass here. Yeah, so this is how we're going to make the component generic so that we can reuse it in different places. So if it is edit, we can just say edit. Alright, so these are using the fallback button. That is a default button if we don't pass any trigger elements. We have just a trigger label. But then in places where we want to use a different button, we can just say trigger button like this, and then we can pass a button to it. And here we can just say new, and we can add the plus icon here. Even actually we can just remove the width from here. Yeah, and as you can see, so here we can customize it to look the way we want. You can even say variant outline, and yeah, there you go. So when you click on it, it's still going to do the same way because we are cloning this button and then adding the on-click event, which opens the modal. So here we have a generic component with different buttons, then they do the same thing basically. So that is how our component is going to look like. Now this edit is also going to open the same modal, and then it will prefill the modal with the default details, and then we are going to be able to edit it. All right. So if you noticed, it is the reason why I added so if we check the modal here, it's the reason why I added the handle submit outside this component, so that when we are editing, we would be able to update the database. When we are adding a new option, we would be able to add it as new option. We would be able to insert. So this way makes the component generic, but then easy to use as well. So to make the edit work, I am going to go to, I think, yeah, option item here. And then here, where we have the edit, I'm going to add an on-click event for this. Right, so on-click. So inside here, I am going to set the ID of the option I want to edit. Right, so I'm going to say option ID. Right, so set option ID like this, which I can get from item.id. Nice. And then it is going to open a modal. So the reason why I want to do this one slightly different is that the drop down is already a pop over. Now, if I use the modal here, there's going to be some conflicts. There's going to be some issues. Doing it this way is a bit easier than having to reuse the modal within a drop down. There's going to be event propagation issues and all that, where if this drop down closes, the modal is going to close automatically as well. So I don't want to use the modal here. So I'm going to set this option, and then I'm going to open a different modal, which I'm going to render down here. Right, and this one I think is also a better option because I don't want to render a different modal for each item that gets rendered. So if I add the modal component here, what is going to happen is this is an option item. This is a different option item, right? They all have these edits, which means that if I add the modal on the edit button, all these items are going to have individual modals, which is not a behavior I want. So I just want to have a big modal dialog, and then the content is just going to change. The modal is going to open every time, but then the content of the modal is going to change based on what I click. The best place to create this modal is inside the place where we use it. All right, so here, custom field options. So I can wrap this whole thing in a modal dialog. All right, so like this, I'm going to put a dialog around this component here. All right, so inside here is where we render the options. So we just want to render the dialog component once, right, and not create it for every option. And here I have to add the hook. All right, so as you can see here, I have to put this whole component in a dialog. And then for the option item here, now I'm going to pass 3 more props to this, which is going to be the open modal, close modal, and then set option ID. So I'm going to import this from React, this as well. And then here, I'm going to get them. All right, so I'm using the set option ID and then open modal down here. So where are we going to render the modal content? So we can render it somewhere down here. So the only thing we're going to use is the custom option form, this form here. So we check if selected, if item.id is equal to selected option ID. All right, so notice we haven't passed this yet. So I need to pass this one. I'm also going to pass the final 2 functions that I need to pass to this, which is the delete option and then the update option. So we can get all of that. Here we have selected. All right, and then here we can create some functions and call these functions here. So we have handle update option. All right, we check that this function passed is a function because we don't want to pass anything apart from a function. And here too. Right, so that we can pass this to the delete as well. So here we can just say on click, and here we need to pass the ID. So you have to just do this item.id. So the ID of the item we are deleting. All right. So here you see we are using a dialog content here, and because we have wrapped this in a dialog, it is still within a dialog, right? Because a dialog content is supposed to be used within a dialog component, right? So it's still valid. All right. So here I have to add all the props as I have added here, but you can see that I have to add it here as well because it's the same component I am reusing. But inside the drag overlay, I don't really need these. I don't really need them for anything. So what I have done is here I've added a component drag overlay, right? And I've created a duplicate of that component, but just a template. And then I'll pass just fields that are needed. So I'm going to use this one here. And then I'm going to pass the needed props. Also in some component, I don't want to show the description for the custom field options, right? So I'll use this prop to hide or show it. And here, right, so I'll just pass it down to where I have to pass it to. And then in the component here, I add it, and here, and then down here, I think I'm not even showing the description. So item dot description. All right, and then here I'm going to say not heading description and this. So yeah, everything looks fine. Missing the comma here. It still works the same way. Nice. These ones don't have descriptions. So we can click on edit, and as you can see, we see the default details here that we can edit. We see the modal open. Nice. All right. So let's say everything is looking okay. Handle delete. Now we are just calling the set options, and then we are updating the option. And then this one, we are deleting the option by doing filter. So this way, we can just use it and then handle the update and delete. I mean, wherever we use this component. All right, so we're going to remove these from here, and we're going to use it inside the modal here. Right, so inside here is where we are going to use it. So as you can see, we have grid columns, and then we have it 2 for medium and then 1 for small. All right, so you can see that I have added them. So for sizes, priorities, and then for columns. So I have to add the label one as well. We've not created that component yet. So yeah, these are all the props. And then here I pass a trigger button, add new option button, which I am creating here. It's a similar button I'm using for all of these. That's why I moved it up there. And here, handle add option item. It's a function up here which switches based on whether it is a size, priorities, or this, and then it sets the states, which I have defined up here. So you can see it's left with the labels one, which we would implement. But if we look at how it looks like right now, so we need to enter a project, and then we click on continue, and there you go. All right, so these buttons are not looking right. Styles are not being applied, but yeah, I'll fix that one. But yes, we have these. I can drag and drop. I can click on edit sizes. Yeah, create new. Nice. Drag and drop these. Small, medium, large, extra large. And then create as well. I can also add it. Nice. And I can delete as well, right? We set that up. Okay, so that is working fine. So let's clear these unused imports and these ones. Let them save this, close this one, see what is here. All right, so the labels, that's what we are going to create next. So let's also create the labels component. Now for the labels components, it is a bit different than all the other options, right? But then it's much simpler than the custom field options. If I show you again, right, so here, this one is a card that we have these form inside, and then this field which renders a color popover. And then when you edit it, it renders the same card again under the item. So yeah, to save time, I am going to go through quickly and then create the label component, and then I am going to take you through a bit, but you can also have a look at the source code, and then you can see how the component looks like. but it should be simple for you to understand because it's very similar, just that we are just changing the style of the component, and the tags are also different here. So yeah. All right, so as you can see, I have added the label form. All right, so create or edit label form here. And as you can see, inside the folder here, there is the label badge. There is also the label list. When we go through the label form, there is an input for the name, description, color. Now you can see that the color is a popover, and then the trigger is an input. So when you click on the input, it shows the popover, and then you can see that we are rendering some colors here, which is the label colors that I showed you. This one. Yeah, the rest are buttons. And here we have is valid hex color. So we are checking that the color we are passing is a valid hex color. So we don't want any surprises. And then here we have select random color. And it's for this button. So when you click on the refresh button, it selects a random color for you. If you want to select a random color. So if you go here and I show you, so for example here, this button is what I'm talking about. Whenever you click on it, it selects a random color. But if you want, you can change the color by clicking here and then selecting your own color. Right. Well, apart from the colors here, you can also enter any hex color here at all. That's the reason why we have to check if the hex color is a valid hex color. Yes, but that is everything about the form. Basically, if I open, yeah, the label badge is very simple component, and the label list, here there is handle update label and delete label. These are just function props, calling the function props that we are passing on that label so that we can handle the actions outside. But here we go through the labels that we pass, and then we render a badge using the label badge. And then down here, as you can see, we render the create or edit label form here as well. So here where we are going to use it, I'm going to import the form, and then I'm going to import the list. Nice, I'll add these handlers. And here we have this button, right? So this button that we add here, which says new. So when we click on it, then it will show the label card, which is this form. So as you can see, I have show new label card here. So how to add this as states? I'll go up here. Then I'll come and then put this here. And when I come down here, yeah, the cancel will just set this one to false so that it will hide it. But we need to add these two functions as well. So handle add label item and then remove label item. All right, so I can just add them beneath this one. And here when we do add, we spread the labels and then we add, and when we remove, we do a filter. Right. All right, so these are all looking good. So we can go back to our app, and then we can test again and see. Open, and here we have the label. For some reason, still the colors are not being applied. I'll fix it after. But here, as you can see, so when I click on this, it shows the card, and when I click on cancel, it disappears. I can click on edit to show the individual cards as well, and I can click on delete to remove them. Nice. So let's see why the buttons styles are not being applied. All right, so I just refreshed it. I did a manual refresh. Let me just test and open again. Yeah, so the styles have been applied, right? All right, so we're able to see the options. So now let's work on creating a new project and then also making the skip option work. All right, so to make the creation of the project work, I'm going to add the query, the Supabase query to create the project. So here we are going to go to details, and then projects. Right, so as you can see, for management, we have the close, reopen, delete. Now we're going to add the create. I am missing this project with options type. So let's go here and let's add that. All right, so here. All right, so these are for custom field options. Now we're going to create another one for field, which is the general one, which will have the ID, label, description, color, created at, updated at, project ID. And then for some of these fields, there is also the order and limits. For status, there is order. So these are the fields I will be saving to the database. These are the fields I will be using for my form. And this one is saying an interface declaring no members is equivalent to its super type here. So I think we can just do, instead of interface, we can just do type. And then we can do iLabel is equal to iField. Yeah, and then here we do project with options. All right, so now this is okay. So first of all, we are creating the project. All right, so we create the project, and then we would get the project back so that we can use the project ID to add the options. So for example, statuses, we are inserting statuses, and here, project with data, just like I showed you, would have the options, the statuses, labels, priorities, and then sizes. If not, we are just going to default them to empty array. So we insert them, statuses, labels, and priorities. We are going to first of all check if project data does statuses, right? So if there are statuses, that's the only time we're going to insert. The same thing for labels and the same thing for priorities. And we are doing that because if we skip the option, we are going to set them to null or undefined. So they wouldn't have to call this. So the query wouldn't have to call these ones and then sizes as well. All right. So this is the query. We're just going to pass the project data from here when we click on create. So where is the button? Yeah, so create. So I just added this on click, disabled, and then also these status check. So let me add them up there. All right, so after there is creating state here, and then here I've added a handle create project. I need to import this from client, and then here I am doing auth.get session because I want to be able to get the user ID. All right, so here as you can see I'm doing session.user.id because I have to save the ID of the user who is creating the project. I have skip default option, which I am going to add very soon, but I need to import toasts. All right, so it's going to say project created successfully. If there is an error, go into fill and throw the error toast. Here I need to also add a router from next navigation. All right, and then for the skip default options here, we check if it is true, we pass an empty array. If not, then we pass the options, the default options. All right, so let's skip default options here. I need to add the state. So if it is set, by default it is false. If it is set to true, which the checkbox down here is going to control it. Where is it? Yeah, this one. All right, so I add a checked and say is skip default options on click, set it to the opposite. So if it is true, it's going to set it to false. If it is false, it's going to set it to true. So it's going to toggle it. So we should be able to create a new project now. Let's go to the modal and then let's say sample project just for testing. Test. Continue. And I'm going to create this without skipping the default options. So create project created successfully. And yeah, we are being redirected to the project details page, as you can see. All right. Nice. And yeah, we have the project ID here. And if we check the database as well, as you can see, we have sample projects here. So we look at the ID of the project. Let's copy cell content. And then let's go to one of these options, like the sizes. And we want to check that the options were created, because it's a lot we can really see, but we can use the project ID to check. So what we can do is to filter, and then we can add a field here, which is the project ID, and then paste the project ID here. And then we do apply. And yeah, there you go. So you can see that these are the options for that project. It was created successfully. The options here, size, status, we have labels, priorities. So they have the same columns. ID, created at, label, description, color, just like what I showed you in the code. Okay, so now we are going to create the project details page, which is where we are going to have the Kanban board. So if I go back here, as you can see, this is how that page looks like. So we have the header, and then this menu here for settings, to go to settings and insights. And here we have the board. So we have the column container, we have the task item, and we have this menu on the columns. And then we also have this button here, and then the form to create a new task. And then here we have this button to create a new column or a new status by opening this form that we built again, so that you can save a new column for this project. All right, so that is what we are going to be doing on this page. So I'm going to put together the template. I will take you through them just to save time, and then we can add the implementation after. All right, so here you can see that I've put together the UI of the board really quickly, and yeah, we're gonna go through them, but this is how our board looks like. And yeah, you can see that I'm just putting placeholders here. We're going to fill this out. The menu here too. All right, and then the form at the bottom here to add a new task, and then also the button here to open this modal. Let's look at the code and see how we came up with this board. All right, so this is the folder of the project details page, and here we have the project details page. And as you can see, I'm just putting test project here because we've not actually fetched the actual project yet. And here I'm also passing default statuses from the mock, from the default status options that we have. And here, when we go to project details component, which is here, we're going to see that at the top here is where we are showing the project name, which we pass from page. All right, so we will load the project name and pass it to this component. And here we are showing the project name, and on the right side, because we are doing flex justify between, just to put the menu on the right side. So this is a drop down menu where we have two drop down items, settings, and then insights. You can see that this one is going to projects / project ID and then settings. This one is going to project ID / insights. All right, so that is a drop down menu, and then this is where we have the actual board. Right, at the bottom here we have the actual board. So let's open the board, which is this folder. You see we have a couple of components inside this folder, but index.tsx is the parent component. And inside here, as you can see, for now we are passing just these three props That is a project ID, project name, and then statuses, which we would need in this component. I just have a handler function here, which I'm not using yet, so I will use that soon. And here we have the button which says show hidden columns. It's not working at the moment, right? So up here, and then here is where we show the column container. So we are looping through statuses, and then we render a column container for every status. So we will go into that component shortly, but here is where we are reusing that component that we created. And so the create or edit custom field option modal, and we pass the title as new column. We have the handle submit, create column, and then here is also where the trigger button becomes useful, because we just want to put an icon inside it. And so we pass a trigger button with no label. Alright, so this one is very generic. It makes us do that. Alright, and here is where we have the handle submit, where when we create a new column, we are going to handle it here. So let's go to the column container, which is this. It's a bit large, but yeah, let's go through them. So we also pass the project ID, the column, the tasks that are supposed to be on this column. Right, so we pass the task for that column down here. So when we load the tasks, we are just going to filter task for each column. And here we just have column label color, which is a simple component which just shows a div with a rounded fold, just shows the color of the column. Right, so this one. So nothing more. And I have a tooltip here. Right, so the tooltip is basically for the column limit. When you exceed the column limit, it will just show that column limit exceeded. Right, so column limit exceeded or breached. So if it is, equal to the column limit, it will just say reached. If it is more than, it's just going to say exceeded. Alright, so maybe I could have broken this one into different components, since this file is a bit large. But yeah, for now it's here. I would do that later. And here we have column options. Right, so before we go into the column options, let's look at the other stuff we have for a column. We have for the column, right? So here we have the column description. So the column label is here, and then we have the description beneath it. On the side of the column label is where we have the drop down, where we have the options. Basically, right? We have the limits as part of, beside the column label, and then the options is on the right side. So if we go back again, you see what I'm talking about, right? So the description is below this one. All right, so that is how the layout looks like. And here, and then here, as you can see, we have the task list, and we also have the task item component, which is here. We would look at that shortly. But here we are going through all the column tasks that we pass, and then we show a task item. At the moment, there is no task. It's just an empty array, so we don't see any task on the columns. And then here is where we do the add task, right? So I'll show you how I am doing the layout in case you want to know. So this show input here is going to show the input, which is this input, and then I have add, and then I also have an X to cancel, right? And you can see they are displayed flex. So there is the input, there is the button, two buttons for adding and then canceling. But if we are not showing the column, if we are not showing the form, then we are showing this add item button, which is having a width of 4, right? And then when we click on it, it's going to set the show input to true, so that we show this form. And then when we click cancel, it sets it to false. It clears the input as well. And this handle add item is the function we're going to use to add the item to the database, and then we will load it onto the column. So we should go into this component next, that is the column menu options. Right, so here we have a dialog. That's because we want to open the details page for the column details, so we wrap everything in a dialog as well. Right, so here we have edit details, and then you can see we open the form, this form again in a dialog. Right, so we are reusing this form a lot, so that's the reason why we have the dialog here. We already created this hook that we are using, but you can see this is a drop down menu. All right, and then it triggers this ellipsis. We have some items to say set limit, edit details, hide from view, and we also have delete, right, to delete the column. This one, we have the column content to open the custom option form. Nice. So we already created this component though, so you know about it. And there is also other dialog content here. All these dialog content are being rendered in the same dialog, and that is the reason why we have the parent dialog here, so that we don't have to be creating different dialogs for different things. So we just have to pass the dialog content like this. So we have a dialog content for updating the column details. We also have a dialog content for setting the column limit or updating the column limit. Right, so as you can see, if I go back here and I show you, so set limit is going to open this form where we can update the limit. This is for the details, this is for the limit, and then this is for delete. So when you want to delete, we open a confirmation dialog to confirm that you want to really delete. So we use this option type here to set which dialog content we want to show at a particular point in time. Right, so details, limit, and then delete. So whenever we click on a drop down item, then we set the option type here. Right, as you can see. So that is how these options are working. Hopefully you get it. And for a task item, it's not a large component. We just have the name, and here I've created stacked avatars component here, which goes through the assignees of the item, and then it displays a user avatar for each of the assignees. I'll show you this component. We also have the title of the task, and here we have custom field tag renderer, which shows the options that are applied to the tag. So this one is for priority, this one is for size, and then we have the label batch that we created for labels. So let's look at some of these components like stacked avatars. If we go to components here and we look at stacked avatars, you can see that based on the users I pass, I am rendering a user card. So actually, let's look at the user card. So a user card uses a hover card from Shadcn. So when you hover, you see that card that appears for that user. And then the trigger is the user avatar. And it points to the ID of the user, right? So profile ID, so that when you click on the avatar icon, it will take you to the user's details page. And here we have user content. Here, so I'm using memo just to avoid a lot of red rendering. But yeah, the user avatar component, the user card content component is here. We show user avatar, the name of the user after the avatar. We also show description, and then we show the links for the users, right? We have a separator here basically. So yeah, I think that's basically it. So now we are going to implement them one by one. We're going to start from loading the columns from the database. So that is inside this page here. So you can see we are just passing the default statuses, but we have to load the actual columns or the actual statuses from the database. Alright, so here I have added the query to load the project details with the statuses. And so here I do Supabase start from projects, and then I do select. Here I'm just selecting the project name because that's the only thing I need here. I already know about the project ID from the params, so I don't need to add that. But here I am loading from the referenced table statuses. Remember, the status ID is a foreign key inside projects. So we can load the details for all the statuses relating to this project this way. And then these are the fields we are loading from that table. So we get a status ID, the label, description, color, order, and then limits. So we need all these. And so this way, the query becomes one. We load the project details, and then we load all the statuses that are in this project as well. Here, we are doing an order, right? So we order the statuses, and then this is where the project ID is equal to the project ID, basically. If there is an error or there is no project, we're just going to redirect to projects. But here, because we now have the details, it means we can now parse the correct project name by doing project.name. Here we can parse project ID as well. And here we have the statuses, right? So we can do project.statuses. Nice. And yeah, have to do this just to get a type correct. All right, so if I save it, let's see, we can now remove this one. We're not using that anymore. You can now save this one, and then let's go and check it out. Alright, so as you can see, nothing really changes, but we are now loading the data from the database, and you can see some changes here, right? With a column limit. These are the default value we set for the column limits, 5, right? So you can see that this is loading from the database now. Okay, so the next thing we're going to work on is hiding and showing some columns, right? If we want to hide and show some columns, I think that's the easiest to do next. So let's implement that as well. Okay, so yeah, we would go to the project details. Yeah, the board component here. This is where we have the show hidden columns button, right? So here I'm going to add the handler, the functions to handle that. All right, so yep, so here I've added a local state for the columns, which I'm setting to the statuses so that I can manipulate these columns by updating. And you can see I've also added a state for hidden columns, right? I could have used array here, but I am using sets in this case. So here I have a button to handle column hide and then handle show hidden columns, which sets the hidden columns to this. So if you want to hide a column, you do a set and then previous column, and then based on the column ID, it's added to the sets, right? Which is a list of sets. So add it to the list, right? So it's going to keep the column IDs of the columns that you want to hide. And then handle show hidden columns here is going to set that set to empty. And down here you can also see that I am doing a visible columns, right, which I do columns.filter, and then hidden columns set the hash column ID. And so I am doing a filter, and then I'm filtering out the hidden columns, which means here we're going to use visible columns. All right, and then here, instead of putting a 0 here, we can say columns.size. So hidden columns.size, and you can see it's automatically added the on click here for the handle show hidden columns. So yeah, that is what I was going to add. So when you click on it, then it's going to handle show hidden columns. So it's going to bring the hidden columns back, and we are going to hide the column from inside this column container. Right, so we're going to pass some more props. But before that, here we only want to show this button when the column size when the hidden columns size is not empty. Right, so we're going to do hidden columns dot size is greater than 0, right? And let's close it here. Right, so this is only going to show when we have hidden columns, when we have some columns hidden. And the last styling I want to do here is now you can see we are doing a calculation of the height here so that we don't have a scroll bar. All right, so if I go here and I show you, we have the height of the board to like the page. Right, so it means we have the header here, we have this header here, we have this component here, right? So the height of the columns we have here will be calculated by subtracting all these elements heights from it, so that we get, we don't actually have a scroll bar. We always want to see the bottom of the column, right? So we want to avoid scroll bars basically. And so even if I try to make the page a bit small like this, as you can see, like the height also adjusts. It adjusts to the height of the page, right? So we want to always avoid the scroll bar on the side here. If I hide this element here, so you can see that now we have a lot more room down here, which is not ideal, right? So we just wanted this one to always occupy like the space. Right now, if we try to decrease this one a little bit so that it goes down a bit, like this. Now when we show the column, now when we show the hidden columns, you see that the scroll bar is back. Right, so we just want to use the column size here to change the height. So we are going to say if it is greater than 0, we want to show this one, right? We want to use this height, and otherwise we want to reduce the calculation. It's supposed to be in a string, so this is going to use 155. Now go back, and then we show this one also adjust fine, right? And then the space here is reduced a little bit. So let's undo, and then let's implement the hiding of the column. All right, so we are going to add one prop here, which is on column height, which is going to call this function that we have here. And then we go to that component. We're going to make sure we accept that on column height, which is going to take the column ID, and then it's going to send it to the parent component, and then based on the ID, it's going to add it to the hidden columns. We would pass it here so that we can handle it with the button action. All right, so this is where we're going to use it. So we would parse it, and then we would go into the component, and then we would use it. Yeah, so you can see we already have it here together with all the other functions that we're going to be using, like the update, delete, and then the column height. So this is where we have the options. Right, so down here, hide from view, we are going to pass an on click, which we're going to say on column height, and then we pass column.id to it. So let's save this one. Let's save this one. And then let's save this one as well. So we can go here, and then we can check if it works. So hide column from view. Reference error on column height is not a function. So maybe we are not parsing it somewhere. I think we are missing it here. We need to parse it here. So now if we go back and try again and we click on hide columns, and there you go. So the column is hidden, this one shows, and we can hide another one. Okay. And when we click on this button, it shows all the columns back. Alright, next I'm going to add the logic for the delete. Alright, so we have the handler here. Alright, so here as you can see, I have also added the utility functions for my column queries here. So things like update limit, update details, delete column, which we are going to use. There is also create a column and then get next order. We would use these when we need them, and I'll explain to you. For now, we're going to use the delete column here, right, which is just deleting a column based on the using the column ID, right? So from statuses. So here we just have to import the columns utils, and you can see I have added a button here, undo delete column. Right, it's setting the loading, but here it calls the delete query function, and then it also calls the on column delete. And then these are toasts to show if it is successful or failed. And then here we also close the modal. Since it's a modal, we use the hook to close the modal here. That's the hook we are using for all our modals. Now we have to make sure this on column delete prop that we are using here, we parse it as well. And so here we're parsing the update one as well, because we will use that very soon too. And then here we are going to add it. We have the update and then delete, and then we need to make sure we pass it to column menu options here. Inside this component is where we are going to use it, so we need to make sure we parse them here, and then we are going to create the handlers here. The delete one. Right, and here we are setting the set columns. We are doing a filter, so we are removing that column if we delete. And this is going to happen after the database update has been successful. It removes from here as well, so that we don't have to do a refresh of the browser to be able to see the changes. We see the changes as soon as as soon as the database is updated. Alright, so that's the reason why we have the columns states here, so that we would update the state and then it will reflect immediately. So if we let's go here, let's see what is wrong. Okay, so this, it's because of the unused variables we have here. We will use them very soon. Is there any error here? Updates. Alright, so let's just add the empty function for update to avoid error. You can even add the actual logic, because we are only going to update the column with the ID. Right, so the details that we want to update, we just pass that. So yeah, this is how we're going to be doing the update. So once we save this one, let's make sure we save all our files, and we go and check it out. Let's see if we will be able to delete a column as well. So are you sure you want to delete backlog column? We get a confirmation pop-up, and once we click on delete, successfully deleted, and it's gone. All right, so to confirm if it is actually deleted, I'll just refresh the page, and as you can see, the page is refreshed, but the column is gone. All right, so we've removed that column. So delete is also working. So let's look at the updates details. So let's go back here. For the details, the first one we are going to do is updating the limit. So column menu options, we come here. All right, so we have this handle update limits here. Let's add a logic. Yep, so here we are doing update limits, columns update limit. So if we look at the query, I just update the limit using the column ID, and then it's also selected, so you get that updated column back. And here we get the updated column, so we call on column update, which we are passing as well. Alright, so we can save this one as well. And then because we are passing it here and then here already, we should be able to update the limit. So let's say set limit, it opens the modal. Let's set this one to maybe 15. Click on it, column limit updated successfully, 15. Let's refresh this. As you can see, it is still 15. So the limit is being updated successfully. If we want, we can just check the database that this is updated without having to refresh the page. But yeah, it's still fine, just for testing purposes. I'm also going to do the updating of the details, right? So here, we already have the form, so we're just going to get the details, whether the label, the color, or the description has changed. And then we are just going to update the database with whatever changes. So that's also very simple. We are calling columns.update details. Let's check it out. Here you see that we pass the details, we pass the update here. We also pass the column ID, just like the others. And here we pass the updates. So whatever changes, we just pass the entire column and then it will just update. Right? So as simple as that. And then the only thing is we also call this on column update again, which should work because we are already parsing it. So for example, if I try to, let's go back and test this. All right, so if I try to, let's say, edit this one, change it to, let's say, backlog or something instead of ready. And then let's change the color to maybe red or something. And let's click on update. You see updated, we see backlog here, we see the color changed. Yeah, we can refresh and see if it is actually taking effect. Yeah, we see that it changes, right? So after refresh, it's still the same. So it means we can also update the details. All right, so now let's work on creating a new column. When we click on this button and we fill the form, so that is supposed to be here. All right, so we have this form here, and then we have the handle submit, right, which is calling this function. So we are going to fill out this function. Okay, so I have imported column utils here. I'm calling it column utils because we already have columns here. All right, so for create column, for create column, you see we are adding the data which is coming from the form, and then we add the project ID here, limit, we set it to 5 by default, and then we are also getting this order from get next order. Now get next order is basically checking for the statuses and checking for the order. All right, so the order of the last item. All right, so as you can see, we order the statuses. When we select the order, we order them in our ascending order, and then we just select one item. And then down here, as you can see, we are adding one to the last item's order, basically. And this function is going to return that. Right, so that's what we are using here. So it's always going to create the column and put it at the end, and then you can change the order by updating the statuses if you want. Yeah, so that's what we are using here, and then we call set columns here as well. It's loading. We are setting this loading state. Let's make sure that here on this button we're gonna say disabled if it's loading. Once we save it, we should be able to create a new column. So let's create a new column. All right, so let's just say another column or something. Let's choose some color, and let's create the column. And as you can see, it appears here. We're able to set the limits, edit the details, hide from view, delete. So the next thing is we're going to go onto the settings page, and you're going to work on being able to invite users onto the platform before we come and work on the task itself. So we will be back on this board to implement the drag and drop of task, create a new task, and all that. All right, so let's go and have a look at the settings page again. So if you go to settings, yeah. All right, so here we have this layout, we have project settings, where we have the same form that we have when creating a new page here. This time you would use it to update the project settings. We've already created this form. We will not spend a lot of time on this. We would add these buttons to be able to close and delete the project. Now we've already implemented the functionality to close and delete projects permanently, so we would also not spend a lot of time on this. Now the only place we're going to spend some time on working on is this part where we are going to search for users and then invite users onto the platform, assign users roles, and all that, right? Now these options, we've already worked on them. We are just going to use them here. I don't think anything is going to change. So we are just going to add these components that we created on these sections. So I'll just add them, but this is the part that we are going to be working on. All right, so let's do that. All right, so here I am going to close these. I'm going to close this one for now. Right, so inside projects, project ID, I'm going to create a new folder called settings. All right, and here I'm going to add all the other pages, the project settings, the main settings page, the access page, the labels page, the status, priority and sizes pages, right? So these are all different pages. So I'm going to add the folders and the pages. Right, so inside here, I have to first of all add page.tsx. I'm going to create a new folder. Okay, so here we are. We have the project settings page. So that's the first page here. We have the form, and then you can update the project details here. So the form is exactly the same as we built initially. Now here we added the danger zone here where you can close the project or you can delete the project permanently. All right, so nothing new here. I'm going to skip this one for now, and I am going to go to label. Now notice how it goes to a new page, right? So under settings we have labels, but then you see that the layout is still the same, right? Yeah, so we are going to create a settings layout wrapper around all our pages so that we can have the layouts being the same for these pages. And here you can see that's the same component we created, and here again I see that the button style is not being applied, but yeah, I'll fix it. I think I know the reason why. Yeah, this is basically the same, right? When I click on this cancel, right? So nothing actually new here, and then the same for these as well, right? I'm gonna fix the button styles, don't worry. Nice. All right. And here same. All right, same here. All right, so the only thing I added here is the fact that I have a utility function which checks that there is changes, which checks that there's been changes in this list, right? Whether it's a position or it's an update to any one of these, it's an update to the details or any of these, then this is going to flag up and you would have to save the changes again. All right, so that function fires up every time there are changes. All right, so the place we are going to focus on is this page. So the access management page. You also have access to the source code, right? So you can have a look at all the things I put together for these other pages. I noticed that the video is getting long. I just have to be quick with some of these and don't have to go over some of the things we've already talked about. I feel like, yeah, you can just look at the code and see what's going on. But here is where we are going to try to implement, right? So let's look at the code before. All right, so here you can see that let me just close these and then we'll go through them one by one. So here as you can see, under project ID, we have settings, and then we have page.tsx here. Now you can see that here we are loading the project, right? The project details. We are loading everything, that is the name, description, and stuff like that, and we pass it to project settings form. This is basically a form where we are going to fill the project details. Right, so the project name, description, the readme, we fill it with the details of the project, and then you can update it. And then handle update is basically calling update. Right, so the query here is just updating the project's DB with the updated data. Very simple. Now down here is where we have close project dialog and then delete project dialog. So these are the dialog that pops up. We created this dialog initially. So that's the project form, right? Now here we have the statuses, which is the columns. That is the page. Inside the page, we are just loading all the statuses, and we pass it to the status component here. Yeah, I was taking some time, but yeah. And here, as you can see, we are using the creator edit custom field option modal again. We have the custom field options here, the component we created. And here, when we have unsaved changes, we show this. And this is just a button to update, right? So handle save, this is the only thing I'm going to mention with this. So you can see that inside here, we have items to delete, items to update, and then items to add. All right, so these are the three items we are calculating. So here we have compare and update items, which is the utility function I was talking about, which basically checks that there's been changes, right? So here, yeah, so here it uses a map, and it does a lot of checks every field, and also the length of the array as well, just to see that there's been deleted items or updated items or new items added. All right, so you can have a look at this array utils function. You can just copy and paste it if you want to use it. But yeah, it gives us items to add, items to update, and then items to delete. So these are the three things we would need. So if we add new items, or we are creating new items, then we would have the items to add here. Now, if we've updated any of the list, any of the items we have already, we would have them here. If we delete any item, then it will be added here. All right, so when we have items to delete, then we are just going to get the IDs and then call and then do Supabase from statuses.delete. For updates, we do upset, and then for new items, we do insert. Now, this upset here, you can read about it from Supabase, but then it basically like a combination of insert and update, kind of. So yeah, so it's basically the same thing for all. It's basically for the same for priorities, sizes, and also labels. And here, this is what I was talking about, right? So I have this settings layout here, which builds the actual layout of the settings page. As you can see, we have the navigation items here. All right, and then this is where we look through the navigation items, and then we render a link for each of the navigation item. And you would realize that for all the pages, I have the settings layout. The only thing that changes is the title, right? So for example, here it's the project settings. Here we have the status settings, right? So we have it as a wrapper for all our pages, right? Yeah, so that's how the layout works. Okay, so we are now going to work on inviting the users to the project, right? So let's start from the page.tsx file here. Okay, so here we have the params, and to get the project ID, we can just do await params. It's a promise. First of all, we have to get the logged in user details. So we would import the script client from the server, and then here we do supabase.auth.getUser so that we get the user details, the logged in user details. Let's also import this from Next navigation. Alright, so here we would have the logged in user, and we're also going to get the project details. Now, the reason why we are getting a logged in user is we would first of all need the user ID to be able to know who is inviting which user. We would also try and check because first of all, you might be the owner of the project, like you might be the one who created the project, or you might just be an admin of the project who is inviting someone. So we have to check for all these things. So we need a logged in user to check if they are the owner of the project or they are just the admin of the project, to give them different access, right? Yes. And we're also going to load the project details. So Supabase stuff from project. I am getting project details where the project ID, where ID is equal to project ID, getting one item. So if there is an error or no project found, just redirect to /projects. Alright, inside the access container here, we need to pass some props. So as you can see, I have these props set up here, which I'm going to pass. So I have to pass the project ID, project name. I also need to pass the initial members, which we'll find a way to get that. And then current user ID, current user role, and then also created by. So we're going to get all these from props, and then we're going to start passing some of these that we have. So if you go back to page.tsx, yeah, so we can pass the project ID, project name. We can say initial members, MTRE for now. And we also need the current user ID, which we're going to pass user.id from here, current user role. So how do we get the current user's role? So we are going to calculate it in two ways, right? So we're going to check if the logged in, the current user is the creator of the project. So if the person is the creator of the project, it means the created by ID is going to be the same as the user ID, this user, logged in user's ID. So we would know that they are the owner of the project. If not, then we are going to check the logged in user from the project members and then check the role they have. So we're going to say project.created by is equal to user.id. So this contains the ID of the user who created the project, and then we are getting the user ID, the logged in user's ID. So we check if the ID is the same, then it means they are the creator. If it's creator, then give them owner. If not, just give them read for now. We would after we're able to add members, we would get the role, the actual role from the project members. Yeah, but for now we're going to put the read access here for now. So when we come here, then we're going to pass it to these components that needs them. One, let's look at the props we need. Yeah, we need to pass the project name, project ID, and then we also need to pass the current user role created by, and then this function when we add a new member, which will trigger the invitation. Yeah, so we're gonna pass them here as well, and then here we are going to pass the props. So we're going to set up some states up here. Right, so initial members and then current user role. So this is where we're going to be updating the states and then pass to these two components when they need them. For manage access, we need to pass members. We need to pass this function as well. Current user ID, project ID created by, and then on current user role change when the role of the user changes. So let's pass the props here. And we don't have this function and this function, so we are going to create them. Okay, so here we have handle add member, or handle member added. So when a member is invited, we will just add it to the members list here so that we can pass it to this and then show it straight away on the UI. Handle current user role change. We are setting the current role to a new role. So this is going to update the state for the current user's role as well. Yeah, it will become clear very soon. So yes, let's just go into the invite users component and then use these props. So the first thing we are going to do is be able to search for users. So we should be able to search for users. We will add a state here. Alright, so the search term and then set search term. That is when we enter inside the input. And then we will pass the value, a search term, and then unchange set search term to the input. Right, so up here, I'm just going to do some check and see and check that if current user role is not admin and owner. Alright, so if it is not this or this, then return null. So if current user role is not admin and it's not owner, then return null. Otherwise, then we're going to let them invite users, right? So only admin and owners can invite users. So up here, I'm going to put another state here for search results, which is going to be the users that we search for. So all the users we find, we're going to store them inside the search results here. And I'm going to add a debounce hook for the search. Alright, so we don't want to be doing a lot of rendering during the search. Since the search is going to search on the server side, we don't want to be doing it on every input. We want to implement a debounce feature where the search is only going to be triggered when you stop typing. Right. So I have a hook that I am going to add here. Now some of these hooks and utility functions that I am writing, most of them I just give a prompt to ChatGPT and then I make ChatGPT write them for me. So you can just copy and paste the same hook and use it if you want. Or you can make ChatGPT write a similar one for you if you want. Alright, so I have added this use debounce hook here, which is doing some set timeout and clearing the timeout as the user continues to enter. We're going to use it here. Alright, so bounced search, I'm using the use debounce hook here. Let me import it from hooks. And here we are going to pass this as async because we are going to do a server-side search. Alright, and then the value, let me make it term, which is the string, and then this is the delay for 1 second. Now inside here, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check if the term dot length is less than 2. Right, so if it is less than 2, let's just say set search results to empty and then return. We only want to search when you enter 3 or more characters. That's what we want to start searching. Alright, so here I want to add some states here and then use it, loading states I mean. Alright, so and I'm going to say set is searching to true, which means we've started doing the search. Alright, so now here we have to first of all make sure we check that users who are already members are not searched for because they're already members of the project. So we are going to exclude the users that are members. So we are first of all going to get the existing members of the project during the search. For that, since we are already loading the project members, we would parse the members here, right? And I think we can even do that. So here I'm also going to load the project members, right? Even though, I mean, we've not added any project member yet, we can still load them since we have a database table. We can still check if they are project members and then load them. If not, it's just going to be empty array still. All right, so here I want to load them at the same time, so we can just use promise.all to load them in parallel. Okay, so as you can see here, I am doing promise.all here. I'm loading the project and then the members, right? So I have these two queries here. So one is loading the project and the one is loading the project members. Now, yeah, I'm checking for errors and then redirecting to /project if there are errors. But here, as you can see, I do a creator here and I check if the logged in user is the creator of the project. It means we are going to give them the owner role. If not, then we are going to check if they are a member of the project. Then we would be able to say members, that is the members we load, the project members. They'll find where the member user ID is equal to the logged in user's ID. So to get the current role, we are checking if they are the creator, we give them the owner role. If not, then we get the role from the member, right? So we get a role from the current member here. Otherwise, we're going to fall back to read access. So now we would pass that current role down here, and then here too we would pass members, or we would pass empty array if there are no members. So we come to here, the access container, and now we have to pass the members. We already have initial members here, right? So we have them here in members. We are going to pass members to invite users as well. We were passing it only here, but we want to now pass it here as well to the invite users. And the invite users here, we will now have to pass the members. So as you can see here, we are using this member with user type that we added. Right, where we have user, it's a project member, and then we load the user details as well. Right, so we are loading the ID, name, email, avatar for the project member. When you look at the query here, you'd see that we load the user details, right? So we load the project member details here, and then we also load the user details. Now, if I show you the database, now you can see that here we have the project members table. We have created a project ID. We have user ID here, right? We have a project ID and then user ID. And we also have the role, invitation status, and then others. So we need these details, right? But then we also need the user information as part of the project. As part of the member details we are loading, we also need to load the user details, which is inside the users table here, right? So their name, description, avatar, and all that. That is what we are doing here, right? So we load the member details using the SAR, and then we also load the user details as part of the member details, right? So that is why we are doing member with user. So hopefully this one is clear why we are using this type, because it sounds a bit confusing. It's a member with user. Member is already a user, but then with user again, right? So we have the project members table separate, and then the users table is separate. So we load the member details and then we load the user details as well. And so here we're going to say members. All right, so here, as I said, we're going to exclude the existing project members. All right, so let's do try and catch here. Right, and then here we are going to say excluded members. All right, so we're going to create an array which is going to contain the excluded members. So I'm going to do members.map, and I do member the user ID. So you remember we have the user ID on a member, so we would get the user ID here, and then we also want to exclude the logged in user. All right, so in case the logged in user is not a member but is the owner, we want to also exclude them. We don't want to search, and so we will use the created by here. All right, so we want to exclude all these. We want to exclude this list of users from their search. All right, so to do the search, I'm gonna write the query here. From users, we want to do select, right, where the name matches their search term. All right, so we use the I like, and their ID is not in the excluded members. So yeah, to make this clear, let me just say excluded user IDs. All right, so where their ID is not in the excluded user IDs. All right, dot join. So here we are going to join them with a comma. So we pass them a string here. So all the user IDs. And we are doing a limit of 5. So we load 5 users at a time. So if you want to find a particular user, you just have to enter you just have to be more specific with their name so that they'll be included. If you want, you can increase this number, but I'll make it 5 for now. If there is an error, we're going to throw the error. If not, then we are going to set the search results, right? So we're going to do this. So set search results data as user. Or if it is undefined, we're going to pass an empty array here. Let me just say finally, we are going to make sure set is searching to false. Inside here, we're gonna log the error. We're gonna show a toast if for some reason the searching failed. So let's import this, and we have to also make sure that we're creating the Supabase app here. Create client, let's import it. All right, so we're going to use the debounced search down here where we set the search term. We are also going to trigger the search by calling the bounced search and then passing the search term as well. So this is going to handle the controlled input, and this is going to do the search. Now you can see that I have a loader here. All right, so I'm going to say a searching, and then show this. Let's import. Let's save it. All right, so just put in the loader, which is going to spin. I do animate spin on the right side of the input here, just to show the user that it is doing the search. All right, so down here, this is where I have the drop down, more like, right, attached to the input. I'm going to loop through the search results, and I'm going to display it instead of having this hard-coded user here. And first of all, I'm only going to show this drop down if the search results length is not 0. Right, so I'm going to say search results length is greater than 0, and that is the only time I am going to show this. In here, I am going to do search results dot smap, and I'm gonna say user. Let me close it here. And I need to pass a key. It's gonna be user.id. Right, and then inside here, I am going to say user.name. Alright, so we can go and then test this. Okay, so here, when we come here, search by name, we can begin to enter a name. Alright, so let's just say, and there you go. You saw the spinner. Alright, so let's enter. You see that spinner here, and then if there isn't any user, it's just not gonna show any user at all. But so if we do something like though, yeah, there we get 2 users. Right, nice. So we're able to search for users, and then alright, so and then when we click on a user, at the moment nothing happens right now, but we are going to handle that one as well. So when we select a user, so we're going to add an on click. Right, so what are we going to do? Now we want to create a state for selected user. So up here, we can add another state for the user that has been selected. And then here, when we click on it, we're going to say set selected user to the user. Now we also want to close the menu, and so we can do set search term to user.name. Alright, so we can go back here, and then let's do do again with search, and then the input is set to the user's name. We select that user as well. Nice, and then you can see the drop down closes as well. Alright, so we are now able to search for users and select them. We have them saved in the state. We also need to be able to capture the role that has been selected for the selected user here. Alright, so let's do that. Alright, so for that we are going to add another state for the role. Right, we add a role and then set role, which we are going to use down here. And then we are going to add an on-click event for this. Right, so on click, this is where we're going to handle the invitation, like invite the user. Right, so on click, you can say handle invite user. Nice, and we can go up here and then we can create that function as well. And let me fix this. Handle invite user. Right, so up here, if there isn't any selected user, let's just return. But down here we can also check, and we will not enable this button. Right, so we say disable equal to if not selected user. Nice, and then right, so we also want to add a small loading state here for the invitation. Right, so we set it's inviting to true, and I want to use that down here as well just to disable the button. Or is inviting. First of all, we're going to get the member details here that we're going to add to the database. So we create a unique ID for them. Project ID, we get it from project ID. The user ID, we get it from the ID of the selected user. And then we also get the selected role. Invitation status is going to be set to invited because we are inviting them. And then invited that, we're going to create a new date. So we are going to insert that. Alright, so here we can just say Supabase from project members insert member details. If there is any error, let's just throw that error. So let's put this in a try and catch. Alright, so we catch the error, we show a toast, we set an invitation to false here as well. Now, if there are no errors, we are going to send the invitation email. Alright, so let me just put a placeholder here and say send invitation email. So we are going to work on the invitation email. We are using Resend and React email for our email, React email for our email template, and then Resend to send the email. Now, let's check our package.json to see we've already installed React email. We haven't, so let's go ahead and install Resend and React email. All right, so the first thing to do is to go to the docs and then let's have a look. So this React email. All right, so we can copy this command, right? npx create email at latest in our project. So we can paste that here. All right, so when we do that, it's here, it adds this folder in here, React email starter. And so we're going to move this one into our project. Let's see, it adds this package.json. All right, so there is this dev to start the dev server to test the email templates that you create. So I'm gonna copy this one, and then I'm going to go back to our package.json here. Because we already have a dev here, I'm going to say email dev like that, and then here I'm going to move this one inside our project. So I have to add this in our package.json. So here I'm going to add that, and then I have to also add this one. So I can save it, and then I can now remove that folder. Delete. So I'm gonna run this. All right, so as you can see, it's running port 3000 because 3001 because 3000 is in use. We are running our project on port 3000. So the email dev is running on this port, so we can open it and check. All right, so this is it. All right, let's close the docs here. So we can check some of the templates that we have, the default templates that we have here. So as you can see, let's check this one. So I think we are going to try and create ours to look similar to this one. Yeah, this is right, an invite user template. So we're gonna make it look something similar to this one. So yeah, let's go and remove these templates and add our own. Let me open the docs again. Apart from these templates, you can explore the components here. All right, so for gallery, for commerce, there are a lot of components here that you can basically use. When you click on the code here, you can just copy if you're using React or just normal HTML. All right, so a lots of templates that you can look at, but if you want an actual template, you can also click on the templates here, and here we have a lot of templates here. So you can come here, and then if you feel like you want a particular template style, you can just click on it. For example, this Slack here, you can just click on it, and then you'd see how it looks like. You can get a code by clicking here. Otherwise, you can also build your own template with normal React JSX and then Tailwind CSS. So let's close this one. So let's go back, and then inside emails here, we're going to remove these templates that we have here together with the static files. Let's just delete, and then we are going to add our template. All right, so as you can see, I've added this invite user template here, and it's a bunch of React email components that I'm using together with Tailwind styling. All right, and adding some default values as well, just for the testing. Right, so we would pass the username invited by username, the project name, and then also the link, the invite link. So when you click on this link, where it should take you. Right, so we can go and then take a look at how it looks like. As you can see, we only have this template in here. When we click on it, yeah, this is how it looks like. All right, so this is the template we are going to send to users when we invite them, and then they can click on this button to accept and then they would also have a button. They would also have the link displayed like this. This is a test link, right? It's not gonna work. All right, so inside up here, we are going to create a folder API, and inside it, we are going to create the invite user, and then inside it, we are going to create routes.ts. We are going to add a route to invite users. I'm going to install Resend, and I'm also going to get my Resend API key. And so if you've not created an account on Resend, just create your account, and then you can get the API key that you can use here. Right, so I have added this API key in my env local, so I have to install the Resend package. All right, so I'm going to do npm install Resend. All right, so Resend is installed. Let's clear this. Now, I already showed you how you can add your domain from the beginning and how you can also create the API key. All right, so if you missed that, you can look at the section where I showed you. Yes, but you can see I am using my domain name here, right? mrshadrak.com, project, no reply, this, and then the subject is invitation to join a project. And here we are passing the username, project name, invited by, and then the link. We're passing that to this template, which is invite user email. So the invite user email is what I showed you. That is our email template, where we display all the details, right? So join project name on project X, and then we do hello username. This invited by user has invited you to join to join this project. That is a project name on project X. And then accept invite by clicking on this button where the href is a link. And yeah, we also put a link down here. So yeah, that's basically it. That's as simple as that. So it means that to be able to send the email or to be able to hit this route, we are going to go to API/invite user, and then we would hit this route. And once we hit this route, it is going to send the email by doing resend emails send. So we're going to close this route, and then here we are going to add down here. All right, so here I have created an emails folder here, and then here I have Next.js, and so I have the emails object, and then send project invitation property here, which is an async function. And you can see I'm doing await.fetch. I'm hitting API/invite user. Method is post, and here is where I am passing all the details needed, like the to and the email we are sending to, project ID, role, username, project name, invited by username. So we are going to pass it when we call this method. So let's close this one and come here and then use it. All right, so here simply we can do emails.send project invitation. Selected user.email, that's the user we are sending to. We pass the project ID, we pass the role, that is the role we select, username, selected user.name, we also pass the project name, and then the invited by user, which is the current user, the logged in user's name. Now we need to pass this as well. So let's go here. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to create another hook here. And this is where I am also going to start using React query, and that hook is going to be responsible for getting the current logged in user details, right? And the reason why I have to write the hook, even though I can get it from the session, is that for the session, for example, the name of the user and some other details of the user might not be in the session, because remember we add them when the user is signing up. We add them when the user is signing up, but we don't want to rely on their session. So we want to be able to make sure that we are getting the correct user details from the users table all the time. So we are going to use React query to make sure that we are caching the user details so that we don't make a different request every time. So when the user has been loaded, it means we can just use that user on any page at all that we want to get the current user details. So we are going to use React query to load the current user details, and then we are going to cache it. Whenever there is a new logged in user, then we are going to refresh it. So I have added the hook use current user. And here, as you can see, this is the query to load or to fetch the user details. I'm fetching from users, and I'm getting these details, right, where the user ID is equal to, where the ID is equal to user ID, which we are going to pass. And we are returning the details like this. Now we come here and then we are using use query. Right, so down here, and here you can see, because we need the user ID to be able to load the user details, we can get that from the session. Right, so we do supabase.auth.session, and we set the user ID in the state here. And once the user ID is set, then during the use query, we pass the user ID to fetch user details. All right, and here you can see that we are doing enabled, not user ID. we enabled when user ID is present. That is where we are enabling this query. And then we do some stale time, and then we do the cache time as well. And here we're going to pass the user, and then we are also going to pass the loading state as well. So it means that we can always use this use current user in any client's component, and it's going to give us the current user. So here inside our invite users component, we are going to say use current user like this. So const, we are going to get user. We're also going to get is loading, but let's use the user for now. Right, so if the user details are loaded, it means that we would get the user name. Right, so we can do user.name here. We can also use any user details if we want. We are capturing all the user details correctly here. So remember, we are passing on member add here. So this is going to update the members state that we have. So this one is going to set the members by adding that new member. So down here, after the invitation is sent, we are just going to call that, and let's create this new member. Alright, so up here we can just say new member, and then member details with pride, and then the user is also going to be the selected user, and then we would add the new member here. And we're also going to show the toast to say that invitation has been sent successfully, and then we would also reset the form. We could reset the selected user, the search term, and then search results. So we should be able to invite users now. Let's test and see. Let's go back. All right, so let's search for the user. Let's say John. All right, so let's invite John Doe. So let's give them right access. All right, so I just want to change this text. Yeah, so if it is inviting, I just want to change to inviting, and then if not, we're just going to say invite. So we come here again, and let's invite this user. So we see inviting, and yeah, success, invitation sent successfully. So let's open the email for that user and check. I can open this, and yeah, I see the email. Nice. So we can click on this, and this is also the URL here, right? So HTTP localhost 3000 invites. It goes to invites, and then the ID of the project, and then the role is also right here. Now when we click on this, we're gonna get 404 because we've not created the invites page. So yeah, we have 404. So what we're going to do is now we're going to create the invites page, right? I've added the invites page right now. So this is how it's going to look like, right? So invites, and then we have the project ID, and then we have page.tsx. So what this is going to do is, first of all, get a logged in user. If the user is not logged in, it's going to redirect you to /login, and then the next page is going to redirect you back after you log in. All right, now if you have logged in, then it is first of all going to check if the user has been really invited. All right, so remember, we are going to save the details in our database under project members. All right, so we are checking the user who is trying to accept the invitation, because the link can be sent to anybody at all. So if you are clicking the link by mistake, or I mean, if the link was sent to you for some reason, and you are just clicking on it, it should be able to check that you are the one who was invited to the project for sure. So it checks the project members and check project ID equal to the project ID we pass, user ID equal to the logged in user ID, and check the invitation status being invited. All right, so this is going to check that you are the user who was invited using the user ID here, checking that it is equal to the user ID passed. If not, it is going to redirect you to not found. Alright, so you can't click on it by mistake unless you are invited, unless you are actually invited. Alright, so if you are not invited, you cannot accept the invitation. But if you are invited, then it is going to just update your invitation status to accepted. It's going to update your date to the recent date. All right, and then it is going to redirect you to the Kanban board, which is this. All right, so that is everything going on in this invite page. So at the end of the day, if the invitation is successful, it is going to redirect you to project/project ID, which is where the Kanban board is going to show. Nice. So now we should be able to accept the invitation and get redirected. All right, so let's come here and then let's try to refresh this again. All right, so you can see that I'm still getting 404 here when I refresh, and that's because the current logged in user is not the user who was invited, right? So this is a different user. This is the user who created the project. So we need to log in as that user since we are opening the link here. So we will log in back to this user again, but let's log out for now. All right, so we go to login and then we try to log in with that user. All right, so now that we are logged in as that user, as you can see, that is the user here, John Doe. Now accept the invitation again. So we will come here and then we would come and click on this accept invitation. All right, so you can see that it redirects us to the project board, right? That's the Kanban board. And then if we check the projects of the user, we now see the project listed here as well. All right, so users can accept their invitation. Let's log back into the other user. All right, so we are here. So let's close this one. Yeah. And yeah, so invite user is working, right? We can now invite users. We can go to this component, which is manage access, to show the project members here, right? So because we have the members, we are going to now look through the members and then display all the project members here. We would have a checkbox, the user avatar, their name, and then we would also have their role, the role that has been given to them. Okay, so here I'm doing members.map now. So I'm mapping through the project members and I display the checkbox, the user avatar, the name of the user, and then here I also do a check to check that the member is probably the logged in user. So to display this U text beside the user. And then here, if the member or invitation status is equal to invited, it will just say pending invitation. And then here also, it's going to check if the logged in user is the owner of the project, it's just going to say owner. All right, and then here you can see that I'm passing owner.id and it's coming from a custom hook that I created. I could see that I'm doing this check a lot right now. All right, so where I have to get the logged in user and check if they are owner by checking the user ID is equal to the ID of the user who created the project, right? So I have moved it into a hook now. All right, so here, and you would also see that I'm using React query, the hook which loads the project owner. All right, so the project owner is different from the current logged in user, but at some points the current logged in user could be the project owner, right? Yeah, but they are different. So I have used project owner now, and I also have the use current user hook, which I am going to use. There is this helper function here to prefetch the project owner, which I'm going to be using a bit later. I'll show you where we are going to be using this. For now, we are using the use project owner here. Then this returns the owner and then it's loading. When it's loading, it's going to show this loading text. And then after it's loaded, then we also know the owner here. Now, the project owner is going to be merged with the project members so that it displays all the members of the project, including the owner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a filter up here. Okay, so here you can see I'm doing all members, right? So I've added a comment here to say combine project members with owner if not already included. So here I am using use memo. Alright, so if no owner, return members or just fall back to an empty array in case. But what I am doing here is I checked if it's owner in members. Yeah, so we just have to do this. Yeah, so I just have to do this check and see if the owner is not in members already. For some reason, it's not going to be there, but yeah, we just want to check to avoid duplicates. All right, so if the owner is not part of members already, then we are going to create the owner user. All right, so ID, user ID, right, and then we pass the user details as well, and then we add it to members. So the owner is going to be the first item in the array. We can now use this one, all members, by Resend here. Right, and then we save it. So right now, when we go to the project list, now you can see that we have the logged in user, and then you can see this is owner, right? This is the person who created the project, and it says you, meaning you are the logged in user. I mean, the user here is yourself, right? And you'd also notice that this is selected for the users that can be removed, right? So we're also going to check. We won't show the checkbox for the owner, right? The project owners, because you can't remove them. So when we go back to the code here, this is where we display the checkbox. All right, so here we are going to check if member.userid is not equal to the owner.id, then we would render the checkbox. Yeah, so we don't see the checkbox for this user. Another check that we want to do is the current logged in user. We don't want to show the checkbox for them because we don't want users to be able to remove themselves. Right, so you can be removed by a different user, but you can't remove yourself. So here we are also going to say current user ID is not equal to member.user ID, and then we would show the checkbox. Now we have to handle when the checkbox is clicked. We add a function up here to handle the selected member. Here, handle selected member, and then I'm going to pass the ID, and I'm also going to pass if it is checked or not checked. I'm going to create a state for the selected IDs, which I am going to use as set because I want them to be unique. I want to prevent duplicates. It's a set of strings, so the IDs. So I'm guaranteed that these are going to be unique IDs. Right. And then here, if it is checked, we are going to add. If it is not checked, we are going to delete. And then we set the selected IDs to new selected. Right. So we are not mutating it. We create a new set here, and then we modify this set, and then we return, or we set the selected IDs to the new selected IDs based on whether we are adding or we are deleting from this. So when we go down here we can add checked and say selected IDs.has, then it's going to check, and then on change we're going to handle selected member. So we get a checked, and then we call handle selected member. We pass member.id, and then we pass the boolean. And then up here where we are doing 0 of 2 members, we can now say so selected IDs.size of all members.length. All right, so when we come here, you'd see 0 of 2 members selected. So let's hide this as well if no member is selected to be deleted. All right, so this button we are going to say selected IDs.size is equal to 0. Selected IDs.size is greater than 0. That's where we are going to show this button. Alright, so the button is gone. But now if I select a user, as you can see 1 of 2 members selected, then the button shows up. We also want to make sure when we click on this, it is going to select all the members, excluding the ones that they don't have the checkboxes. Alright, so let's go here. We're gonna handle that. Alright, so handle select all here. If checked, that is if the checkbox is checked, then we're gonna go through all members.filter, and then where member.userid is not equal to current user ID and member.user ID is not created by. Right, so those are the two checks we check to make sure they don't have their checkboxes. So we make sure we do that check here. So at the end of the day, we are going to have only members that we can select. Right, so we do selectable members dot map, and then we add their IDs, member.id, to the selected IDs here. Otherwise, when we uncheck it, then we are going to set it to an empty set. So here, so this checkbox here, right, so for unchange, we are going to call handle select all. Alright, and then for the checked, we only want to check it if the members length is greater than 0, and then all the members ID is included in the selected IDs here, apart from the ones we are excluding. Right, so we want to check that selected IDs has the member ID here. Right, so we do every, and we do the filter first of all. This is going to ensure that the checkbox is checked, and then all the selected and all the members that are selectable would be selected as well. Right. So here, when I click on this, you see that it will be checked and this member is going to be selected. And when I uncheck it, it is going to unselect it. So here I've added a function, handle rule change function here, which receives the member ID and then the new rule, that is the rule you've selected, and it's going to update it from the project members table. It will update the rule and also update the date. Alright, they updated that date. Alright, so as you can see, apart from that, we are calling this on current user rule change. So this is probably when an admin user wants to change their own rule, we allow them to do that if they want. So the only user who can change a rule is an admin user, right? And if you are an admin user, that's the highest rule you have. So if you are changing your own rule, that means you are changing it to a lower rule. So you are going to restrict your own access. So we just handle that check here to check on current user rule change, so that we would also refresh the access that the user have immediately they change their rule. And so that's why I was using this on current user rule change function here. So yeah, apart from that, we just do on members change. We also refresh the members state, and then we show some toast. And here we also have the function for removing members, right? So we get selected IDs, and then we build the IDs to remove array. And here you can see from project members delete, and then we do in. Right, so in, we can pass a list of IDs here where the IDs matches. So every ID which is in the list here is going to be deleted. We are also refreshing the members list here after delete, and then we are resetting the selected IDs. Right, so yeah, simple functions, nothing more going on here. So we are going to be using them. Alright, so for here, I am going to add this props. Alright, so disable if it's updating. I've added that state up there, and then it's going to call handle remove members. And then for rule change here, on value change, yeah, I'm also going to put this here and then this here as well. Alright, so this component is more or less done. We should be able to update this users. As you can see, member rule updated successfully. They now have read. We can also remove the member if we want, which I'm not going to do that right now. Alright, so I wanted to finish everything up in this part, but as you can see, we are already almost 3 hours 30 minutes into the video, and we have a few more things to cover. So I'm going to end here for this part. Let's continue into the next part and then finish the rest of the project up.